Happy Easter to Cos Samaras from the Redbridge organisation, and none other than Michael Kroger. Thank you, sir, and happy Easter to you, the Liberal legend out of Victoria. Lots to get to, including an awful lot of data to play with tonight, and I will get into this preference stuff because it is going to matter. We're down to fractions of fractions, and votes start on Tuesday. All right, let's get to this here. Cos, what, if anything, is interesting you in all of the data that we're around at the moment? Is anything moving about, and in what direction?
Yeah, it's just a continuation of the coalition losing a lot of votes to minor parties, very significant numbers. So even in our track, which you put up there just before, it's 11% drop in Victoria alone in primary vote, and a lot of it's just going to minor parties, and it's happening nationally. It's happening in very big numbers, and then the preferences are not coming back to them. And we could talk about the impact that Clive Palmer might have in that space, but it's going to be pretty tough for Peter Dutton and his team to get anywhere near close to be able to negotiate with that crossbench. It's looking pretty grim.
Yeah, look, on all of this data, you can only really conclude one thing, which is it's a conversation about majority or minority when it comes to Labor. But Michael, again, same stuff about this data. Are we now in a conversation where we are discussing, there's always a chance, always a possibility, but we are now talking about majority, minority here, or on a day, this and that, and all the rest of it?
Well, the polls have been wrong before on many occasions that we know. If that poll is right, then Albanese probably wins with a minority government. But I just can't help but thinking that's right. I mean, look at Victoria, for example, Paul. So the Labor primary vote dropped 4% at the last election in Victoria, right? But in 12 of its seats, the primary vote again, the drop in Labor was 5 to 14%. So there are a number of seats, 8, 9, 10%, and Scullin was 14%. If you've got Holt, Fraser, Gorton, Corwell, Scullin. So what does that mean? It means that the swing against Labor was very heavily in its own safe seats. So given that Labor have run a very traditional campaign, which is the usual, Medicare's under attack again, it's going to be sold, bashed, slashed and burned, etc., is the usual campaign of lies. That appeals very much to Labor's base. So I wonder whether Labor's vote, say in Victoria and maybe nationally, is returning to the Labor Party in its safe seats and not so much in the marginals. And that's where Peter Dutton would be very much alive. The second thing I'll put to Cos, though, is a month ago, Cos, you had the coalition 4% in front in two-party preferred terms. Now you've got the 9 behind. So do you think there's been a 6.5% swing, two-party preferred, against the coalition in the last month? Because that's a massive number.
And this poll that we're talking about is in key seats, not in the safe seats. So these are marginal seats. Right. So it's not in your Pauls, not in your Frasers. And it's not because the Labor Party is picking up votes. It's because Peter Dutton and the coalition are losing to the minor parties. We've been talking about this now for a few weeks. It is a phenomenon that we see across the country, whether it's at state elections in Western Australia, whether it's in Queensland, whether it's in other states as well. Werribee by-election was a really good example of that. So the majors now lose a stack of votes to minor parties, but the other major party doesn't pick it all up. So that's fundamentally the challenge here, and that is that we're looking at a very polarised electorate. You're either batting for the blue team or you're batting for the red team. If you're upset with one or the other, you don't go and swap, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah, also, Cos, because, again, there's a lot of this data that sort of will appear in other places at other times, so I don't want to jump ahead of anything where it might be, so yell out if I am. But something I'm noticing in those waves, all right, what we were talking about before about how Labor's vote gets better over the past 4 weeks, Liberal vote goes down over the past 4 weeks. The Greens vote in the most recent and the one before has exploded. I mean, it is gone straight through the roof in some of these seats. Is that what determines that two-party preferred conversation? Because clearly, if the Greens are up, the preferences are up. Is that the X factor in these 20 seats that, according to this, the Greens, they're up a very significant amount?
Yeah, Gen Z, they're up to 33%. Right. And so people in their 20s, in all these seats, this is where their growth is occurring for the Greens. And this is where the impact of these younger generations are having on the coalition. So if we look at all those generations, the coalition does not win Gen Z, Millennial, or Gen X. Wow. It only pulls off a win with baby boomers by a considerable margin, might I add, but they're no longer a dominant force in this country when it comes to politics and voting. So it's Gen Z that's inflicting a lot of damage on the coalition. But then, but also millennials leaving the coalition and going to minor parties as well.
Right, but then again, the stuff that might be a little counterfactual, or feeling like the winds are blowing in both directions, when people see, a demographic, this and that says younger men are more conservative than ever before, but obviously they're part of a generation that seems to be, again, leaping further to the left than at previous ones. So is there a myth out there that young blokes are conservative and therefore there's going to be some sort of a ruction here, or it is just a subsection of a subsection here?
Yeah, subsection of a subsection, but the young blokes we're talking about are actually anti-establishment, not conservative, right?
Yeah, good point.
So that's why they like Trump, so...
Yeah, bugger them all.
That's right. And they go for right-wing populist leaders around the world. But they're a subsection. They're not the whole group, but that's absolutely the case. They still have young men that are far more reactionary and supportive of right-wing populist leaders around the world than women in the same age categories.